The Beyond the Fame podcast is fed by Lido Pizza. Lido Pizza never cuts corners. For menu and locations, visit LidoPizza.com. And of course, this podcast would not be possible without our longtime title sponsor, the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Rounding out May entertainment includes the Chippendales on May 13th and 31st. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The beloved classic rock band 38 Special performs live at MGM National Harbor in Oxon Hill, Maryland on June 7th. I spoke with co-founder and lead singer Don Barnes about forming the band with Donnie Van Zant and working through the grief of his brother's fatal plane crash with Lynyrd Skynyrd, to eventually record hits like Hold On Loosely, Caught Up in You, and If I'd Been the One. Hey, Don Barnes. Hey, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Great. How's everybody going?
We're doing great, especially because we're talking to you. We're talking to the lead singer and co-founder of 38 Special, the great classic rock band. You hear them all over classic rock radio to this day, especially Memorial Day, 4th of July. They always do this countdowns. You'll hear them all the time. They're coming to the MGM National Harbor on June 7th, and you'll be performing here on the same bill as Kansas. Now, we've had those guys on, I guess, twice at least, so I thought it'd be cool to catch up with you this time. What's it been like touring with those guys?
Oh, it's great. You know, it started out, it's our 50th anniversary, so our agency, William Morris Agency, last year said, you got to do something special. And we thought, well, we'd put a package tour together with some of our favorite guys. And Kansas, we were just going to do about 10 cities together. And that's grown into 30 cities. And they're talking about doing some next year, too. So it's a great package. Great buddies of ours. You know, we've been through the years, many years together. And so we're looking forward to it.
Well, thanks for making us one of your cities. You got to come through the nation's capital. Well, technically, National Harbor, it's right over the river. It's technically Oxon Hill, Maryland, but it's more or less the nation's capital. You can see, you can see the monuments. You look across the river.
I spent a New Year's Eve in National Harbor.
You did?
Yeah, my wife and I. We
what is it? The Gaylord National Hotel or whatever?
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, it was wild.
Did you ride the Ferris wheel?
No, I don't think it was there then. This was years ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Well, anyway, we're happy to have you. I guess one more on Kansas. Do you have a favorite Kansas song? Either one of their mainstream smashes or an underrated deep cut?
What's the first one they start with? Is it Fight Fire with the Fire? Is that what it is?
Okay.
Yeah. There's several of them, but they have a lineup of great songs and great vocals and good hooks. So we respect all those kind of things. We come from we're kind of a child of all the good hooks and learning songwriting, so it takes a lot to be able to hold people's attention, for a while. It's like the graph. You don't want the graph to drop down because somebody might lose attention. So you got to climb through the songs, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, those guys will be playing the one you mentioned, and then of course the Carry On Wayward Son and Point of No Return and Dusty Wind, etc. But how about you? How about Tease the 38 Special set list? Is it all the greatest hits, sprinkling anything new?
Absolutely. We've got so many. It's a kind of a good problem to have all those hit songs. But
yeah, man.
You're only promoter only wants you to play about an hour. 90 minutes or so. So
hard to whittle it down.
Yeah, we've had to take some of them and bang them up. Like do 2/3 of that song and bang it up into the next hit, and we've had people like, oh, I can't believe, that one too. Oh, and that one too. I forgot about that. And
like a medley on some of them.
Yeah, some short medleys, and then we'll put a lengthy song, and we're going to put some new songs from the Milestone album, which is coming out here in the late summer. And so we're gearing up for all that. But like I said, you start out with the idea, well, you got to do something for your 50th anniversary. So we thought, well, we'll do 2 or 3 songs for the fan base, after all this time. Well, because we're competitive people, and you once you start something like that, you want to go ahead and make a full project and make it great. If you're going to do it, So we're very proud of this record. We took a different approach than we did before. Sometimes you can get real methodical making records, and you might put one guitar and one bass and the drums just to start the song. And then you start overdubbing and adding things. It tends to get a little clinical because everything's so thought out. This was the first time we had all 5 members of the band play the basic tracks, and it was live. And I told them that element of desperation is gone. We have to turn down cities. We do 100 cities a year. And so it's like we have the business out there. So it's not like, please like this because it means our career. So we just started out saying, let's just have a good time with it. Let's hang out. And I think it actually reflects in the music like that. It actually swings and we do one take and then laugh about such and such and somebody made a mistake or whatever. But, it came out to be a real brotherhood, little, putting together tracks. Yeah.
Awesome. And you're saying that's coming out this summer. What's it called?
It's called Milestone.
Milestone.
I couldn't think of any other name besides the 50th anniversary. Well, for 38 Special, it is actually a milestone. So we're just going to call it that.
That's perfect.
The first single comes out June 13th. It's called All I Have It Said. And it's a great song, just a diamond. And it's a great chorus, sing-along chorus. It's kind of a bit of a mid-tempo, but it's a great sing-along chorus. It rocks. The analyzers, they have all these radio guys that they pick the single, and that was the 3rd single off of it. But we were so happy when they picked that because when it's over, you just take a big breath. It's like, wow, that is a diamond. It just takes you for a ride. But anyways, a lot of rocking songs, a lot of things are diverse, just goes through a lot of diverse mid-tempo things and big rockers, big up-tempo, fast up. So again, the element of fun is still in there, and it kind of reflects on all that.
Awesome. So stay tuned for that June 13th. So we'll get a sneak peek June 7th, about a week earlier at MGM National Harbor. We'll hear some of the new album before you can officially buy it. So there you go.
We'll be playing that single first. Eventually, we're going to get more songs from the Milestone record, but you have to kind of edge it in there because you have so many hit songs. You got to move some things around to fit a 5-minute song in there. But people will be blown away by it. But
awesome.
Yeah, we learned over the years the crafting of songs is you start with a beacon, some kind of thing that grabs their attention. If it's a guitar figure, whatever, but it's got to be a beacon that people perk their ears up. And what is that? Well, and then you just take them for the ride. So
awesome.
That comes from all the experience of. You write about 500 songs and you may publish 50. So
you got a bunch ready to roll out whenever you want. Well, we can't wait to see the show. But in addition to teasing the show and the Milestone album, I'd like to touch on some of the quote unquote milestones throughout the band's career. Remind folks of some of the history, maybe some of the the behind the scenes of putting together some of these songs. If you'll indulge me for a little while.
Sure,
so we'll start in the beginning. You were born in 1952. Whereabouts?
In Jacksonville, Florida. We all were from Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville is a port town, has 4 Navy bases, and most people think it's in the water down there or something, but all the groups, Dwayne Allman, Greg Allman, Ronnie Van Zant, all the Skinner guys, Molly Hatchet, Tom Petty was down the road. We all played sailors clubs at about 15 years old. And, you make, $100 a week, 15 years old, that's big money, So, but the thing was, we were underage and we were playing to these 23-year-old sailors that come into port. It's kind of like Liverpool, so kind of a Liverpool of the South. Liverpool was a port town, and that's why there's a big cross section of diverse influences in Liverpool. It happened the same way. And to be able to be exposed of that at a real young age, you start to, we played every cover song of the day. It's Young Rascals and Three Dog Night and all those songs, popular songs at the time. But you tend to, after a while, you start learning the structures of songwriting. Someone else did this. And you start seeing where the payoff is. You start seeing where the beacon is. Where's all the hooks and all the, and so then after a few years of that, I'm talking about everybody had that influence at a young age. And then you start thinking, well, I think I can write my own songs now. And that's when you go starve for the next 10 years because no one's ever heard of you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, sorry. So that's your inspiration and coming up in Jacksonville there. So then how do you meet Donnie Van Zant in Jacksonville? I guess you officially formed 38 Special in 74-ish, right? Yeah. So how do you meet Donnie? Well, his older brother, obviously Ronnie, Leonard Skinner had been huge.
But they were called the 1% at the time. They weren't they hadn't gotten anywhere, but they were a pretty good band in Jacksonville, and people knew they'd battled the bands and all this whole thing. But Donnie and I, we're still partners to this day. We both own the trademark 38 Special.
Sure.
And but we played in dance bands and teen club bands and through the teen years.
Did you go to school together?
No, he was on the other side of town, a little bit on the other side of West Side. But it's one of those things back then. It's like, well, we need a singer. We got this guy, drummer, and we got this bass player. But maybe we can call up Donnie. I'm talking about 14 years old. You're calling up some kid. Can you come over to this garage we're practicing in? And we hit it off. We're good friends. We still are to this day. We're brothers. We've been through a lot together. But that's how we met, and we just kind of stuck together. And Ronnie Van Zant, years later, actually, Donnie told me something, which first of all, I didn't know Ronnie Van Zant even knew I existed, because they were older and they were, moving up.
Yeah.
And so I was so intimidated back then. I was a young kid, and he had told, one of my amplifier had blown up, and I was married at 19. I didn't have any money. And I told him, I said, I think it's over. I can't afford buying an amp or thing. So he went to Ronnie and said, would you help me out with co-signing for a loan for Don to stay in the band and to continue on? And so Ronnie Van Zant drove downtown and met me in a music store, and I picked out an amp, and he said, you got to pay for this, man. But I put a big, nice Ampeg amp, and of course, I did have to pay him, Judy, his wife, back. But he told me, now, after Ronnie was gone, the plane crash and everything, Donnie told me that he had said years ago, stick with this Don Barnes guy. He wants it bad enough.
Whoa.
And I never knew he ever said that about. I didn't.
That's high praise. Yeah. That's the highest of praise. Wow, that's fantastic.
He could see the fire and the desire that I was going to go all the way with it.
Wow. So that fire and desire. It may have blown an amp at 19, but it was. You could tell it was the real deal. That's great.
Yeah.
So, all right. So then, like you're saying, they were just the 1%, and then over here, and then you and Donnie are starting a little, what would become 38 Special eventually over here. So then I guess Skynyrd pops first, right? So, what was it like? All of a sudden, you're like, well, my coworker's brother is now massively famous.
Yeah.
Like, did you think, that might help boost our chances?
Yeah. The west side of town was full of musicians everywhere. You could hit a 9-iron and hit pretty much any musician out there. But the Allman Brothers, Skynyrd were influenced by them, because the Allman Brothers started making it before them. And they would go over to the house, the big house they had in Riverside, and they would sit and listen to them.
Yeah.
Ronnie was a big fan of Greg Allman and all. And they played at a place called Comic Book Club. It's become kind of infamous after all these years. That's where all the up and coming bands, we played there. Everybody went through the Comic Book Club, and that was another sailor club. But so they saw that it could be done. That's the thing. Sometimes you don't believe in yourself. Well, you hardly ever believe in yourself. It's so hard, a mountain to climb, that you think this can never happen. I don't see a way for the journey to be able to get to the top of the mountain. And so when you saw Ray Charles came from St. Augustine, which is 20 minutes away, of all people, Slim Whitman came from west side of Jacksonville. So it was proven that you could rise out. And we weren't from L.A. or New York. We weren't the hip bands, none of that stuff. So the element of those groups was kind of the underdog element, because people weren't going to take you seriously. You're just from some hit west side of Jacksonville, and people are not going to take you seriously. So you have to steel yourself, get some big amps, make people listen to you, the songwriting has to improve. You got to keep doing that. So it's one of those things that your perseverance, you have to have that fortitude. And then when Skynyrd did start kind of taking off there, Ronnie was he was this guy from the wrong side of the tracks. And he made the whole world listen to him. And that was such an influence. And he was a tough guy. He had tougher than the toughest. And we all took influence from him. Oh, you don't quit the game. You just be tougher than the toughest. And so we stayed in there and used that influence. And so just on a dour note, when their plane crashed, I flew out. Donnie had gone to his mother's house, and I flew out to Macomb, Mississippi with his dad in a little puddle jumper plane. And, Lacey is his dad's name. he was in denial. He didn't know that his son was gone. And but they had reports from the sheriff and all that. And he on the plane, he said, "I know they made a mistake. My son is not dead," and all, you know. And so I was kind of coordinating. Donnie asked me to take care of his dad and, you know, coordinate getting the cars and everything. So I went into the little gatehouse there at the little small airport. I got on the phone, and Lacey came in kind of excited, like, where are we going? Where are we going first, Don? And I said, well, Lacey, we've got to go by the mortuary first. And that's when he knew. And that was a tough thing to see a dad break down. And we went and saw Ronnie. We were probably the last ones to ever see him. But as I stood over him, I thought, this guy helped me all those years ago sign for an amplifier. And at the time, I felt like I'd been given 80%. I said, this guy has no life in him. And he helped me. From now on, buddy, it's 120%. We are going to go all the way for him. And some of our albums said it was dedicated to the inspiration and persona of Ronnie Van Zant. Yeah.
Oh, thanks for sharing that memories. Yeah. I'm getting goosebumps. So you just saying standing over top of
him. There's a lot of
fortifying your resolve of I'm going to go give it even extra more in his honor.
It was tough. Well, I'll add a little something. You know, they were all in 3 different hospitals, and they were injured, and of course in traction and stitches and all that. It had been a plane crash.
Yeah.
And I watched when Lacey found out his son was gone. We had to go visit the rest of the band guys in the hospitals. And he, on the way over there, he said, don't say anything to them. Ronnie is fine. Don't tell them anything. And I watched him stand over these guys in traction and 1,000 stitches in their face and all that. And they would mumble, how's Ronnie doing? He'd say, you just get yourself better, buddy. Ronnie's doing fine. And that was the strongest thing I've ever seen a man ever do, not to break down. And just say, he's fine. You just get yourself well, because he cared enough about the rest of them.
And then told them after. But oh my God, that is wow. That is wild. Yeah, I actually interviewed the drummer Artemis Pyle was the folks want to look that up on archives. Yeah, he was talking about like the actual, firsthand experience of the plane going down.
Yeah, so I'm sure he articulated what he had to do, run to the farmhouse. And,
it was. I highly recommend if folks want to. I want to make this interview more about 30 Base Special, but definitely go check that out, folks. Look up the Lynyrd Skynyrd episode with Artemis, and it's chill-inducing. Yeah. But
very few people are still around that experienced that firsthand, because everybody's gotten older and. But just only a few of us they're still around. So
the whole Buddy Holly one was the day the music died, but this was another one for the next generation. This changed music forever and sort of martyred those guys. And
we went out to Clear Lake, Iowa. Went out to that monument down that fence line, Buddy Holly plane crash monument. It was sad.
I mean,
Anyway, I didn't mean to put.
No, it's totally fine. We can tie it in there because I know you do your first album, 38 Special, and then the second album, Special Delivery in '78, included Donnie Van Zant's salute to his fallen brother. Take Me Back. So that's how we'll kind of tie it into your guys' career. Talk about those first 2 albums. They didn't have as mainstream hits as you would come from that on.
Well, you're still pretty green at the beginning, and I've always said that people think, oh, wow, they got a record deal, they've made it. That's nothing of the sort. They just gave you a chance to play in the big leagues. And if you can't deliver, then they're going to send you back to the farm league. You're going to be back in the dirty clubs. And also, we experienced that firsthand, how daunting a situation. It's like we were almost going to lose a record deal because, they believed it was A&M Records, which was a great company. They were artist-oriented. They were very patient with developing artists, and they had a nice A&R department and everything. But all of them just great guys. Even to this day, I've got a whole promotion marketing team for this milestone record, and they all know those A&M guys. And they're like, J.B. Brenner says hello. I'm like, oh my God, all these guys coming from the past. So anyway, they were patient about it, and so I have to say this: that we did 2 albums straight over the cliff, man. It was tough. You just don't know how good you have to be. You don't realize. You think when you write your songs, you think, oh, wait till the world gets a whole load of this. You're going to be crazy about it, and nothing happens. So then you pick yourself up and you dust.
But it's all good experience. You're putting in those 10,000 hours or whatever. You're cutting your teeth. You know what I mean?
You have to go through that experience of failure. And I've said this before to young guys: be prepared to accept a lot of failure first, because inevitably you're going to be exposed to failure. So you can't go, oh, never mind, I'm quitting, I'm going to go to get a day job. You have to say, well, I'm going to be better next time. You pick yourself up and you learn more craft and learn songwriting and all.
In that period, how do you come up with the name? Obviously, like a 38 caliber gun, but wasn't it like a police officer like stormed in on a rehearsal or something?
Well, back then, nobody had any money. We had to, you couldn't play in a garage and somewhere because cops would get called on you. So we always tried to find places to rehearse that were out in the middle of nowhere, so it didn't disturb anyone. One was near a church, and they didn't like that. We had to move from there because they'd have Sunday service, and we're over there banging out guitars and stuff. But one was funny. We rented a back room of Johnny's Barber Shop, and it was this guy had his regular daytime business, but we would load our stuff in at night and rehearse, and then we'd have to load out all our stuff before he opened his shop the next day. Yeah. And we never saw the inside of his shop. It's the back room. So he would come in to his shop, and all the bottles of tonic and everything had vibrated off the walls and broken on the floor. So he kicked us out of there. So anyway, we ended up getting further and further out in Ocean Way, which is north of Jacksonville. Yeah. And it was a dilapidated, condemned building on the edge of a big acreage of woods. It used to be an auto parts place, but it was condemned. It had no running water, and the roof was leaking. We had to have grocery store pallets put the amps on pallets, because when it rained, you get your equipment wet. So everything was up on 5 inches off the floor because the water is going to run under it. That's how hardcore it was. But it had electricity, but no running water. So we went out there, and the front door was just a regular door, and we fortified that door with 2x4 and rebar. But when we got through with it, it was about a foot thick, like a vault door. And then we drilled a hole through the cinder block and through that door, and a big tractor chain with a big lock on it. And we for about 2 months we went out there, and as irresponsible idiots as we were, somebody lost the key to the lock. So now we're driving some rusted out car with bald tires all the way out to Ocean Way every night after our day job. That's dedication. You got to be convicted. Man. So we were out there too. We found an old fire escape ladder. It was a 2-story building. It was a fire escape ladder on the side, and all the windows looked like they were boarded up. But there was one window that was on hinges. It looked like it was boarded up on the upper level. And so we'd all climb up this fire escape ladder and push the window open and climb down and rehearse. And when we got through, we would climb back up, jump down the thing. So we were about 2 months out there, and of course, the sound level is 120 decibels in a little room like that. Yeah. And we were bashing out something, and we stopped playing, and we heard pounding on that big vault door, and bullhorns and cops they had surrounded it. They thought it was some wild party out in the middle of the woods.
So someone called a noise complaint.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, man.
Sure. But they made a raid on this building. I mean, they were circling around the back and everything, but couldn't get in. So we were just trying to be somebody, we're trying to make something of ourselves. And so we went and yelled through the front door that we didn't have a key to that door, that we were going to have to climb upstairs and kind of climb down the thing. And we heard through the door, one of the cops said, it was like the old West days or something. He was going to shoot the lock off. I got a 38 special to do the talking for me, or something to that effect. He said,
the name was born.
We didn't even bands, when you're just getting together, you don't really care about a name. You're just trying to see if it's going to be cohesive, it's going to work. So we had our first gig, I guess, in Gainesville, Florida. It was a little club. And we didn't have a name for the band. We said, that was a funny story that happened. Let's just call it 38 Special for now, and we'll come up with something better later. And we never did.
It's a great name. Hey, it's better. It's better than the phrase you said at the beginning of that story. You could have been irresponsible idiots. 38 Special is much better.
That might go over pretty well today. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. There's plenty of those to go around nowadays.
Yeah.
Cool.
The origins of band names they're so odd where they come.
Yeah, but then the one catch, sometimes you put the period before the 38. I don't know if that ever throws off the algorithm.
Lost that caliber point. We took away the caliber point many years ago because you got these gun control people and they're getting offended and all that. So it's
I see. Gotcha. All right, cool. Well, so that's the pick picking the name, and as we mentioned, those first couple albums, 38 Special and Special Delivery, mean a lot to fans of the band, but they weren't that big. It was the third album, Rockin' into the Night in '79, that was the mainstream breakthrough, the hit title track. Did I see that was actually written by the guys for the band's Survivor, like Survivor. 2 years before Eye of the Tiger, and then it got passed to y'all instead?
Yeah, we had a manager at A&M Records. He was an A&R guy at A&M, but he branched off later and became our manager. But he because we hadn't had any success, the studio executives would come out and listen to the whole album, and they're like patting you on the back, and it sounds great and everything. As soon as they get back to LA, the word gets back that they don't hear a single. And so Mark Spector said, there's a guy named John Kalodner. If you've heard of him in the industry, the long-haired, bearded guy, he was in the Aerosmith video. He's responsible for recharging Aerosmith. Okay. But he had this demo tape and said he felt like there was some promise in this song, and would the guys consider doing that? And I said, well, send it to me. And it was a chant thing. We didn't have songs like that. It was all about, Southern rock and everything. Yeah. And so Donnie and I both said, he said, you like that chant, rockin' into? And at this point, I said, buddy, we are behind the 8 ball. If A&M Records, if they feel like this has a future, some kind of legs to it, then let's go back in the studio. We'd already recorded the whole album, and we went back, and it was going to be called Rockin' Roulette, like spin the barrel, nice. And each one is anyway. Yeah. So we went back up to Studio One. We'd already been home. We went back and cut that song in about 2 days. So they decided to call the album Rockin' Into the Night. So that worked out well. And so then it wasn't a smash hit. It was just kind of opened the doors at radio across the country.
It was almost top 40, but not quite.
Yeah. Right.
Just, knocking on the door up. Yeah.
So we didn't know any of those writers, Jim Peter, but he said, and Mark Spector said, well, you had a little bit of success. Would you consider going writing with this guy? We're like, sure, we'll go. He was a Chicago guy. Yeah. And so Jeff Carlisi and myself went up to Burr Ridge, Illinois, and in his house. And we didn't know his history. This guy's a true songwriter. This guy's a genius, But we got in there, and his coffee table was this big ceramic bulbous car, and it was just probably like 2 feet wide. It was a big car. Yeah. And I said, what's the significance of the car? And he goes, oh, that's my vehicle. Your vehicle? He goes, yeah, I'm your vehicle, baby.
Oh, my gosh.
You're the guy that sang I'm Your Vehicle, Ides of March and all that. That was back in 12th grade in high school. Wow. And he sang it. He had played the guitar solo. And Jim Peterick is his name.
Jim Peterick of Survivor is the one you're talking about.
So that day, we had just met, and we had little snippets of bits of ideas of things and little guitar riffs and things. Yeah. And he said, so how you guys been? And that kind of, we were sitting at his kitchen table. And so I had a little notebook there with titles, and songwriters have these little little cheat things. You have a notebook of lines in the lexicon of the English language, and another notebook with titles. And so I said, and I was having problems with a marriage that was going sour, and I had written this thing. And I said, what is it about people that they don't tolerate their differences? They try to change the other person. They want to mold them into something else. And I was going through a bad time. She was trying to keep me under her thumb, and I was trying to be somebody, Mm-hmm. And so I said, and I looked down and I said, what do you think of this title, Hold On Loosely? And he said, oh yeah, but don't let go.
That immediate.
That was just immediate. Wow. It was like two bookends, the couplet there. And we were off to the races then. We can write a story about how men can be too clingy and too, protective or smothering. The word smothering.
It's a good message. You got to hold on, but you keep it loose, or else.
Man, we're all happy together here, but don't try to smother me.
Yeah, no smothering.
Yeah. So
I love that story. That's a great origin story.
So we were kind of off to the races, and it was the first song we ever wrote, and it's been the anthemic song through all these years. We had a golden gem right there at his kitchen table. I still joke about it. He's a sweetheart of a guy. Well, I've known him 42 years now, but I'll play on stage with him sometimes. We'll do that song together. I'll say, yeah, we wrote this at his kitchen table. He didn't feed us anything, but he put us to work,
Yeah. But he showed us his vehicle, and that's about it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it is your most iconic song,
Yeah.
and of course, so that winds up being on the fourth album, Wide Eyed Southern Boys in '81,
Yeah.
which was big.
Yeah. And we started realizing that, okay, you can't just say, "Ooh, baby, I miss you, I love you" all day long. That's contrived. So you start talking about what's real in people's lives, what connects with people. And that song, people thought, man, I know just how that guy's thinking right there. I connect. I relate to that right there. And so we felt like we'd hit on something that you can put relationships issues in songs. So we started. I mean, Caught Up in You was about a girl that I dated at the time. It's after the marriage was gone. And I was dating her, and we had come off the road 9 months after touring, and we were burnt. And everybody take their week vacations. And so I had a little girl I was dating there, and I said, I just can't seem to get, we were contractually obligated to have another album out in 6 months with not one single note, an idea of anything going on it. Again, record companies, it's like a book publishing thing. You're due 6 months. You better have your goods. You got five steps ahead. I tell people it's like writing a book. If you don't know what you're going to say, it's like I woke up this morning. ... That's all you have.
Hey, Christopherson turned that into a good one. I woke up Sunday morning with no way to hold my head. That didn't hurt. So that can work.
Yeah. So I said, I just can't get any work done. I'm just so caught up in you all the time. And it was just like a light bulb went on in my head. I thought, wow, that's a pretty good title. That's something that's positive. You could make it real positive and sing about how, and I never did suspect a thing. All these lines. And so we put that together. So it started working like that. So
I love that.
Even the song, If I'd Been the One, it was the Fire and the Horses in the video. That was a woman and had been dating long distance in Texas. And we had, I was in love with long distance. First of all, you don't want to get mixed up with a traveling musician. You're never going to see them.
They say the road is no place to start a family.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so she one day called me and said she wanted my blessing that she was going to get married. And I thought, it just crushed me. And I thought, well, what if I'd have said that to you? What if you could put yourself in my place? So it's all perspective, point of view. Right. And I turned it around. What if I'd been the one to say goodbye? It's
such a great song. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and so now this new album, Milestone, there are some of those introspective things that are relationship oriented. Mm-hmm. It's always been something that was kind of a style of ours, and we call it muscle and melody. You got a good genial snarl of guitars and a good story over the top, good melody. And hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we were off to the races. But wow. This album, we've got a song called All I Haven't Said, and it's just a diamond. And it's a study on how men they build walls up around themselves, and they don't know how to express themselves to their lover or their wife, whatever. And so there's a chorus that's just a beautiful sing-along chorus that rocks, but it says, I could quote all the poets throughout the ages and still not find the words caught inside my head. But I would write them across the sky how I love you and all I haven't said. So,
you're still doing it.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You're a poet.
What's funny is I was sitting in a dining room there. I'm strumming. This is a few years ago. I was strumming acoustic guitar. I sit in the chair. My wife was in the kitchen, and she's got a little musical background. Her name's Christine, and she had a little club band, rock band, cover songs, and the band was called Damn It, Christine. But she knows music. Great. She's kind of a 90s girl. She knew all that stuff. And I was strumming these chords, and again, back to songwriting, you got to have a great title. You got to have something that you can write, like a roadmap too.
Yeah.
And she just turned around and said from the kitchen, said to me, she said, that song sounds like that should be called All I Haven't Said. I'm like, what? Say that again? That was a perfect title.
As soon as that hit your ear, you're like, that's it.
That's it.
More Say it titles? Again. I need to write that down.
Yeah. So you got any more titles?
Yeah. Start just riffing.
Right. Yeah.
I'll write them all down. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so. I know we're sort of up against the clock, but thank you so much for teasing so many of your big hits over the years. Again, you mentioned Caught Up on You. I want to remind folks that was off of Special Forces. Also, You Keep Running Away on that. You mentioned If I'd Been the One to Say Goodbye. That was off of Tour de Force. You also have Back Where You Belong. Yeah. You can pull from Strength in Numbers, Like No Other Night. Somebody Like You. Like, you got to come to the show to see which ones.
That's right. We unfold that history all the way out to 100 minutes or so. We're with Kansas on the show, so we have to stunt the set a little bit, shorten the set. But But all the history, it unfolds, and people will take a trip back. We've got new material, new surprises. So everybody make it out, because we're going to have a large time together.
Can't wait. As we wind this thing down here, I know you left the band briefly in like 87, and you did Revenge of the Nerds 2, the Back to Paradise.
Yeah.
You did a solo album, Ride the Storm, that sadly went unreleased. I think A&M Records got sold, and then eventually you finally released it in like 2020.
Yeah.
Do you ever mix in any of that stuff or any of the 38 special stuff they did while you were gone?
We had 2 songs from that album. But we were, promoting that release. My wife and I cracked a bottle of champagne when it finally got released, because A&M got sold to Polygram Records for like $1 billion or something. Yeah. So every artist on the label who had a project that year, it was like the kiss of death. Janet Jackson had an album, just died on the shelf. Yeah. And so a lot of people lost out. And we tried to buy the masters of that song, and they're just all about acquisitions. It's all business for might as well be vacuum cleaners for these record guys.
Yeah. Right. But you mix them in every now and then. All right.
I do.
Cool. And then in the final seconds here, I guess Donnie Van Sant, I remember he teamed with his other brother, Johnny, for that duo, like country duo Van Sant, had that song Help Somebody. That was a pretty big hit. Yeah, reminded me of like a Montgomery Gentry kind of hit.
Yeah.
Gosh, sadly, T. Roy died in a helicopter crash. There's a lot of weird similarities.
They were good friends of ours.
Yeah. But all right. So, but Donnie, he retires from 38
what
Special?
Happened, he'd been the front man, lead singer. I had the more radio accessible voice. He sang a little harder edge bluesy voice, songs. And but because of 40 years of giant 6-foot amps aimed at him and 2 drummers, we had 2 drummers back then.
That'll do it.
And they said ear damage was from mainly cymbal crashes. So you got 2 drummers hitting cymbals as hard as they could.
Yeah.
And he eventually got some inner ear nerve damage, and the Mayo Clinic did some macro MRIs and said, if you continue doing what you're doing, you're going to be absolutely stone deaf, and there's nothing we can do about it. He said, you have very few nerve fibers in your ears.
Yeah.
And so they said, you're not going to hear your grandkids laughing or anything Thanksgiving. You won't be hearing your wife talk to you. And I said, that could be a plus. I
don't. So he technically retires for the sound issues, but he's still business partners, and you guys will together be bringing 38 Special to MGM as a business entity, but you'll be on stage with the rest of the guys.
We still get together and write songs and things,
Awesome. Everybody has to see 38 Special, MGM National Harbor on June 7th. This was so much fun chatting with you. I loved all these stories.
Let's do it again sometime.
Sounds good, my friend. I appreciate it. All right, we'll see you there at National Harbor.
All right, Jason. Look forward to it.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.